Hey, Central Indiana, if you want a nicer, newer car you can afford, go for the gold during our Old Ride Relay. Monica Peck here from Hare Chevrolet. If your old ride's a loser, hand it off to us and we'll give you up to $4,000 more than Kelley Blue Book value based on the price of the car you pick. Here at Hare Chevrolet, we're focused on affordability. Our dream team of solution specialists hustle hard to help you find a car you love for a monthly payment that fits your budget. You could even drive a 2024 Chevy Equinox for just $279 per month. So get in the game and hand off your old ride, because you could get up to $4,000 more than Kelley Blue Book value based on the price of the car.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Coming up, 11 o'clock sharp. Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. He's joining. We're talking Quandre Diggs to the Titans. Will Chris Ballard ever get off of his hands and go sign some sort of free agent, free safety? Justin Simmons. We're also going to talk about Sunday, first Colts preseason game. That's coming up at 11 o'clock sharp. 11:20. Zack Gray usually comes on to talk sports gambling, but he's going to join me instead to talk a little Michigan and their whole cheating scandal. He's an Ohio State fan, so we'll see how that goes. Zach's usually pretty even keel on things, but, you know, hey, we'll see how he behaves today. But before we get to all that, I do want to discuss the Colts. So last night, really late last night, I went back and I started to look at the Colts schedule again. Word from the wise here, don't take a nap at like 8 p.m. That's what I did. Woke up at like 9 and was up way later than normal. So just kind of ran out of things to do. So I was like, hey, let me go back. Let me look at the Indianapolis Colts schedule. And I was sitting there and I was looking through it, and I believe that I have identified the most important part of the schedule for the Colts. Now, the Colts bye week is week 14, which sounds terrible. Having a bye week that late in the season, it's the absolute latest that you can have one. It's the worst. Week 14, that's when their bye week is. If you include the preseason, the Colts are about to play 16 straight weeks of football. Jeez, that's brutal. That's a lot of wear and tear. Okay, I feel like the best time of the year to have a bye week is probably around the middle of the season, week 8, week 9, week 10, somewhere in there. Julian Edelman, former New England Patriot, he has a podcast called Games with Names. I was listening to it the other day, and he was talking about the bye week. And he said that there were 2 times during every NFL season that players get just this extra jolt of energy where they're just a little more willing to get out there and play. They play a little bit harder. He said there's 2 times. One is when the bye week is close. When you're like 2 or 3 weeks out, he's just said that there's something about it. You get excited. You just get this extra jolt of energy because you know that you have this off week coming up where you can recover and just, allow your body to get some rest. And he said that the other time of the year was really close to the end, like 3 or 4 weeks away from the end of the season, because at that point, you're fighting for playoff positioning, and some teams are just fighting to get into the playoffs. And so players play with just a little bit more energy because there's stuff on the line. And he said the middle of the season, though, that's where you'll see a lot of teams kind of hit this lull. You're hurting. It's been a long year. It's a physical game. Okay. Every NFL player describes hits the exact same way. They call them car crashes. Okay. So when I look at this Colts season, they kind of hit that jolt of energy for the bye week and that jolt of energy to fight for playoff seeding around the same time. Okay. When I look at the schedule, I'm very intrigued to see what happens weeks 8 through 13. That, to me, is going to be the most important stretch of the season for the Colts. Players are hurt. Injuries start, piling up. It's a lot. And those weeks 8 through 13, I think we're really going to see how mentally tough this team is, because that is once again going to be the most important stretch of the season. The wear and tear over the course of the year starts to show up. Can the Colts win games despite not having a few starters? Because that's when guys kind of start to go down. It's going to be important. And the good news for those 6 games is that 4 of the 6 teams that the Colts are going to play during those weeks will have their bye week sometime after they play the Colts. And this is where the Colts youth should be helpful. I was looking at the roster last night. This team's young. There's a lot of youth on this Colts team. Here's just a list of players under 30. Okay, kind of in the primes of their career, somewhere between 25 and 29. Once you hit 30, things start to get a little tougher. Anthony Richardson's 22. A.D. Mitchell's 21. Julian Blackmon's under 30. Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., Bernard Raymond, Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, at.to, who continues to dominate at camp, Juju Brents, Daiwa Dangbo, Kwity Paye, Kenny Moore, Zaire Franklin, and E.J. Speed. That's like over half of the Colts starters under the age of 30. This Colts team is pretty young. Really, the only contributors that the Colts have that are over the age of 30 are Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner. So I'm thinking that the youthfulness of this Colts team should benefit them in those weeks 8 through 13 when teams kind of start to see the wear and tear, because younger people just recover quicker, right? That's part of the beauty of being young. You can, go play a full football game, wake up 2 days later and feel, 90% okay. For guys that are, 35, 36, 37, it's probably not how they feel. So that should be an advantage. Those weeks 8 through 13, the Colts need to go at least 500. I think there's a real world where they go 4-2. They play the Texans. That game will I believe that game's at home. Not sure. But that game will be tough because the Texans are going to be good no matter what you hear from anyone else. CJ Stroud was awesome last year. DeMeco Ryans is a good head coach. They added Stephon Diggs. They have Nico Collins. They have Tank Dell. They brought in Joe Mixon. Okay, a lot of weapons on that team. A good defensive coach. Will Anderson Jr. should be healthy this year. So that game's going to be tough. They have to play the Vikings. That game's winnable. And then they get the Bills. That game will be tough. The Jets in prime time. I feel like the Colts are going to be better than the Jets this year. But Anthony Richardson's never played in primetime. A bunch of these Colts players don't have a ton of experience in primetime. So that always makes things a little weird. You get off your normal schedule from, playing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Things are just different. So that game will be weird and a little bit tougher because of that. They get the Lions. That'll be tough. That's potentially the best team in the NFC this year. And the Patriots. The only two teams on that list that really scare me are the Lions and the Patriots. So those weeks, 8 through 13, those weeks are always interesting because, like I said, injuries begin to pile up. And what do you do when, Bernard Raymond's out and you're playing a backup left tackle? Can Anthony Richardson elevate this team to a point where they can win games where everyone isn't healthy? Weeks 8 through 13, that's the most important stretch for this Colts team. Very excited to see how it goes. But we have to work through the preseason before we even get to the regular season. Okay, we've got a couple months until we get to weeks 8 through 13. So I want to focus a little bit on Sunday. Colts' first preseason game of the year, hosting the Broncos at Lucas Oil. Now, I am a big believer, and I think everyone else is, that repetition is an important thing. Okay, the more you do something, the better you get at it. But here's the thing. You have to actually do whatever it is that you're preparing for. For example, I podcasted for 4 years before I finally got this radio gig. Okay, it was cool. I like podcasting. It's fun. It's something I'll probably pick up again here at some point in addition to the radio show. But here's the thing. Podcasting isn't like live radio. Just like how training camp isn't like a real game. One is planned out to a T. Okay, if something doesn't go properly, you can delete the recording and you can do it again. Just like how in training camp, if Anthony Richardson makes the wrong read, the Colts can say, stop, rewind, let's run it back. Anthony, you need to look here first and then go to this read, right? But when you're live on the radio or you're live playing a real game in week 3 against, whoever the Colts play, life comes at you fast. It does, man. You look up and it's like, oh, I did not identify that blitz properly. Now this linebacker's in my face and I have to make a play. Okay, training camp and live games are not the same thing. Okay, in training camp practices and in, podcasting to roll with this analogy, it's easy to see what's going to happen. And if something doesn't go the way that it should, you can hit the pause button, you can stop recording, you can blow the whistle, make the play dead, and you can just run it back. Okay, in training camp, you see the same defenders every single day. And I believe that it makes you fall into this lull of like, geez, like I got to play against Zaire Franklin again. I got to worry about Julian Blackmon again. It gets boring. It does. Even when I was playing college baseball, which is not the same as playing in the NFL, but bear with me here. This is what would happen. In the fall, we'd come out, we're inter-squad, once, twice, maybe 3 times a week. And you just get bored because you're seeing the same pitchers every single day. The pitchers are throwing to the same batters every single day. It gets boring. And eventually, you just get so familiar with who you're playing against that it doesn't even feel like a real game. It just kind of feels like just another day, to a point where it's not as productive because you learn your opponent so well. And this is why Anthony Richardson needs to play on Sunday. This is why Anthony Richardson needs to play in every preseason game. Okay, he needs as many live reps as possible. Okay, playing in training camp, it's nice, but it's safe. It's the same defenders. There's nothing on the line. You get to walk around in a red jersey that says "Don't touch me." Seriously. Like when you're playing football and you aren't allowed to be hit, like it's not the same thing. Live reps in front of a real crowd with the lights on, it carries just a little bit more weight. Stuff can hit the fan quickly. All of a sudden, you don't identify a blitzer, or you think that they're running cover 2, but they're really in cover 3. And all of a sudden, on the fly, You have to adjust. And if you mess up, it actually costs your team. It's also different when they're actually allowed to tackle you. It just is. And Anthony Richardson needs as many of these live reps against not the Colts defense as he can get. Because let's be honest, we all know. Okay, I have harped on this, and I will continue to. 11 o'clock, Zach Hicks is joining me, and he's going to harp on it as well. This Colts defense is terrible. This Colts secondary is potentially going to be the worst in the league. Anthony Richardson needs reps against more teams than just the Indianapolis Colts. He needs reps against good competition. Now, while I don't think the Broncos are exactly going to, win the AFC this year, they've got the best corner in the league. Okay, like they have some dudes on the defensive side of the ball that it'll be good for Anthony Richardson to go against. Okay, this guy, this young 22-year-old quarterback that we have here in Indianapolis needs the live reps. He threw 84 passes last year. That's it. That doesn't exactly scream to me that he's ready to go and that he's seen every NFL defense. Okay, I know that he got to sit last year and watch and do a lot of film. Shane Steichen talked about this on Friday. They met a lot during the season to kind of help bring him along. And while there is value in that, okay, and there clearly is, just look at the careers of Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, all those guys sat out for at least a year before assuming the starting position on their respective teams. All right, so there is value in sitting back and watching and learning, but at some point, like you got to get under center, or I guess behind center and shotgun, because that's where the Colts are going to run, 90% of their offense from. At some point, you have to get behind the center, take the snap, and do the thing yourself in in an environment where there's risk, in an environment where things can go badly. Okay, and the best place to do that is in the preseason. Okay, like the preseason is there to identify, who, backups and who you're going to cut and who you aren't going to, but it's also there to help bring young players along. Okay, before, I was on the air from 10 to noon, my boss started me off from like 9 o'clock at night to 10 o'clock at night when nobody was, actively listening to sports radio, because I was new, because I hadn't done live radio that much. And that is what this opportunity is for Anthony Richardson. He needs time. And, in an environment in the preseason where there's some risk, but it's not, week 3 where we're actually putting wins and losses up. Okay, Anthony Richardson should play at least one series in every single one of these preseason games. Okay, he doesn't need to play every snap. That's ridiculous. You're just asking for him to get hurt at that point. But he should play at least one series in every game, and in one of these games, he should play a full quarter. Okay, like he needs reps. He needs just to know what it's like to play in Lucas Oil Stadium on the turf versus in Westfield at their practice facility. Okay, he needs the experience of just being in an actual game, because he doesn't have a lot of that, not just in his NFL career, but in his entire career in general, because he's been hurt a lot and he's missed a lot of time. He missed time at Florida. He missed time in high school. He played 12 quarters last year. All right, so he needs as many live game reps as he can get, and the preseason is the perfect spot for him to get that. Coming up, top of the hour, 11 o'clock, Zach Hicks is going to join me. We're going to talk about preseason game Sunday. We're going to talk Colts, secondary. Justin Simmons is probably going to come up. But before we get to that, got some stuff on the United States 3v3. Okay, the women brought home the bronze medal. The men got eliminated, didn't even make it to the knockout rounds. I've got stuff on that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice Tuesday. I know I am. Now, Zack Hicks coming up at 11. We're going to talk Colts training camp. Preseason starts up Sunday. We're going to get into all of that. Zack Gray joining me at 11:20, an avid college football fan, also an avid Ohio State fan. So we're going to talk a little bit of Michigan football. Now, there has been a decent amount of conversation around Team USA's 3v3 team, especially on the men's side. The women won the bronze medal. Now, when it comes to the men, they didn't even advance to the knockout stages. They didn't even have a real chance to medal. Several questions have been raised about this, and the biggest one is on why didn't the NBA send NBA players? Which is a great question. To be honest, I kind of have an answer, but Brian Windhorst went on the Pat McAfee show yesterday and gave a much better answer than I could give you. So here is ESPN's Brian Windhorst on the Pat McAfee show explaining why NBA players couldn't participate in the Olympics 3-on-3 tournament.
I wonder if the boys feel like it's not good enough for them to go do.
Yeah, like it's a step down.
So we need to be loud about how, hey, we need to win.
No, seriously,
That's
you
a
know
gold
why?
medal, though.
If you want real talk about it, I'll tell you why. Because FIBA doesn't really want the U.S. to do good at 3-on-3. They really want that to be for countries that can't field 5-on-5 teams.
Is that right?
And so they do all these things. Like they have all these different layers and layers and layers of things you have to do to qualify. I don't just mean the team. I'm talking about no play. Like Kyrie can't just show up and play. The only way you can play is if you play in 15 qualifying events. It's not 15. I'm just coming up with that number.
Massive commitment to make the team to get there.
What you're talking about is what they don't want. They don't want guys from America.
Oh,
on
the
the
got it.
5-on-5.
FIBA's f***ing us.
Makes sense. Even more reason for us to go do it. They got to figure that out then.
Bingo. Go ahead, AJ. I didn't know that was of course, FIBA.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make much sense, Wendy, but hey, I guess
hate
that's
us too.
Because honestly, Caitlin Clark, that was something that Caitlin Clark could have done. Now, she may not have wanted to do it, but if Caitlin Clark played, can you imagine what that would have been like? But there was 15 hoops that she would have had to jump through, because FIBA doesn't care about ratings. They just care about growing the game and elsewhere outside the U.S. So that's just not their priority.
That is admirable. We do appreciate that, but the Olympics, we're trying to find the best. Okay, let's find the best in this entire thing.
That was Brian Windhorst on the Pat McAfee show talking about and explaining why NBA players aren't allowed to play, or I wouldn't say they're not allowed to, why it's difficult for them to play in 3-on-3. FIBA doesn't want them to, because FIBA knows that, let's just be honest, if the NBA threw just any three random NBA guys out there, it could be the three worst players in the league. Really, it really could. Team USA would probably just run away with it. Imagine if the NBA was you know what? Here's what we're going to do. Imagine if Jalen Brunson, a guy who you could make a strong argument for to be on the 5-on-5 team. Imagine if Jalen Brunson, Jaylen Brown, that's right, the finals MVP, and Chet Holmgren. Imagine if those three guys showed up and played in the tournament. I don't know how much of the 3-on-3 tournament you guys have watched, but they would win going away. It wouldn't be close. They would absolutely annihilate whoever was put in front of them. So from a competitive perspective and a growing the game perspective, I don't blame FIBA for preventing NBA players from playing. But this is a tough situation, though, because Pat McAfee's right. This is the Olympics. The goal is to find the best in the world. And FIBA clearly doesn't want to do that, which is frustrating and it's annoying. But there is a solution to this, and Ice Cube, of all people, has the solution.
Well, we know we shouldn't be losing at 3-on-3 basketball in the Olympics. That's just not acceptable. We think we got the best athletes in the world when it comes to 3-on-3 basketball. So what we want to do is challenge the gold medal winners, to come to Boston on August 18th when we do our championship and play our all-stars in a nice little friendly for a little change. You know what I mean?
Wait, and what's that pot up to now? 150, I heard?
About 150 grand. Let's see who's the best in the world. So whoever win the gold, hey, you got to see us, August 18th.
Any of our guys that you would love to see out there on the court, on that international stage?
Man, any one of them can take down, whoever they got and put in front of us, any one of our players can take it down.
And have you heard any feedback yet from any of the teams or anyone in the Olympics?
Not yet. We're going to wait to see who wins the gold, and then we're going to go after them.
Cool. Well, it seems like a good offer. I hope to see it.
Hey, why not? Let's see who's the best in the world.
Thanks, Q.
All right, take it easy.
That was Ice Cube talking about having, his all-stars from the Big Three League, which is 3-on-3 basketball here in the United States. It's a bunch of former and retired NBA guys like Michael Beasley. Joe Johnson was big in it a few years ago. I love it. I would 1,000% watch that. I would 100% watch the best players in this Big Three League, a bunch of former retired NBA players, play against the gold medal winning Netherlands 3-on-3 team. I think it'd be fascinating. And this, I think, is the answer. Like Ice Cube, if you're this adamant about it, you should have just figured out a way to get your teams to participate in all of these different 3-on-3 tournaments that lead up to, whoever represents the team in the Olympics. They could have done it. They could have moved their schedule around. They could have had every team compete in it. They could have figured something out on that front. But hey, if it happens on August, 14th or whatever he said in Boston, I'm here for it. Would love to watch the Netherlands come over, play for $150,000. That's a lot of money. And I think it'd be great. I think it'd be wildly entertaining. But it'd be I'd like to see FIBA try to block that. They couldn't, because these guys, they're all former retired NBA players. They'd easily be able to participate in whatever tournaments they need to be selected. But even though the FIBA clearly doesn't I wouldn't say they don't like America. They know that we have the best basketball in the world. And because of that, FIBA has partnered with the NBA, which for me is wildly exciting. There is a report coming out that the NBA and FIBA are looking to expand. There's not any super concrete details, but there is belief that it could lead to some tournaments. And I want this so badly. I think one of the most interesting things in sports is international soccer and this thing called the Champions League. Now, the Champions League is essentially just the best teams in Europe. Okay, so, there's a million leagues over there. There's an Italian league. There's, the Premier League in England. There's a league below the Premier League. There's obviously, La Liga in Spain. There's a million leagues. And what they do is, depending on how good your league is, you get an X number of teams in the Champions League. So La Liga gets 2 teams. So whoever finishes at the top of the table and whoever finishes second on the table qualifies for the Champions League. And then the Premier League, they get 4 teams because they're the best league in the world. So whoever finishes top 4 on the table or in the standings, they then qualify for the Champions League, so on and so forth with all these other leagues in Europe. And then they have this huge tournament, and it is one of the most watched sporting events internationally in the world every single year, because it is truly the best soccer teams in the world, the best teams representing each league in each country. And like I said, it is fascinating. I would love it if there was some sort of formula like this for the NBA and FIBA to do some sort of global, worldwide tournament. Okay, let's watch the Boston Celtics play against the second best EuroLeague team over in Europe. Okay, let's watch the New York Knicks play against, some other team from Spain. I think it would be wildly fascinating. In case you missed it, after the Celtics won, the NBA Finals, the team that won the EuroLeague title challenged them to a game. They're like, hey, let's play. Boston was like, no, we're not going to do that because we play in the NBA, the best league in the world. We would run y'all. So they opted not to play, but I would find it so incredibly fascinating if they could find a way to get some of these cross-league games, because the basketball over in Europe, It gets better and better every year. There are obviously college basketball players that head over there and play over there for, 10 years and make a lot of money in doing so. So I would love it if they were able to figure out a way to do some sort of global basketball tournament with the best teams from the best leagues in the world, something that reflects the way that the Champions League works, I think would be quite fascinating. Moving back, I guess, to the NFL, because the NFL is a crazy, wild place. Brandon Aiyuk is going to be traded. He is. Brandon Aiyuk's going to be traded. Originally, it was believed that he was going to go to Pittsburgh, but reports came out, late last night, early this morning, that Pittsburgh no longer an option. As of right now, the Patriots and the Browns are the two teams kind of in the fight for Brandon Aiyuk services. Now, the New England Patriots are offering Brandon Aiyuk more money, whereas the Browns are offering a better chance to win, I guess. I think it's hard to win when Deshaun Watson is your quarterback, just hasn't been very good since he returned from his legal troubles. So I think this is a perfect case of be careful what you wish for. Seriously. Like, you have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl, which should be on every professional athlete's bucket list. Like that is the one thing that every professional athlete should want, and it just doesn't appear that way anymore. Okay, all these guys want to get paid, which I understand because you have a small window to make money, and so you should maximize that window and all those important things. But Brandon Aiyuk has a legitimate chance to win a Super Bowl in San Francisco, playing for Kyle Shanahan and playing receiver for Brock Purdy, who runs that offense well and finds Brandon Aiyuk a lot. He has a legitimate opportunity to win a Super Bowl out there. And he's like, you know what? No, I would rather go play for New England, who's going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. I'd rather go play for them and make a boatload of money than stay here and potentially win. Or I'd rather go to Cleveland, Ohio. Who vacations in Cleveland, Ohio, to quote the great Joakim Noah? I'd rather go to Cleveland, Ohio and play for this run-heavy offense with my quarterback, with a downgraded quarterback playing for Deshaun Watson as opposed to Brock Purdy. And wherever he goes, he's getting a downgraded coach because he's not playing for this great offensive mind in Kyle Shanahan anymore. He'll be playing for Kevin Stefanski, who I like. I think he's a good NFL coach. Ever since he's shown up in Cleveland, he's won a decent amount of games, and he's taken them to the playoffs, which for the Browns, that's pretty good. Or he's going to go play for Gerard Mayo, who's never coached or who's never been a head coach in the NFL. This is a classic case of be careful what you wish for. Okay? Because there are plenty of people out there that make a ton of money and are miserable. Plenty of people out there like that. And I'm telling you right now, if Brandon Aiyuk, because it seems like this is something that's going to happen. I read a report this morning that he's weighing his options right now. Does he want to go to Cleveland where he can potentially win a few more games, or does he want to go to New England where he's going to make more money? This is going to be a classic example of be careful what you wish for. Wherever Brandon Aiyuk ends up at, he is not going to be happy. Sure, he's going to get his money, but his targets are going to go down, his numbers are going to go down, and he's going to lose a lot. Who wants that? Not me. I can tell you that much, and I don't think that Brandon Aiyuk wants that either. But he's backed himself into this corner. He's going to make a decision because it's pretty clear that the 49ers don't want to pay him, partially because they probably can't because they know they got that Brock Purdy extension coming their way. So I've got more on Brandon Aiyuk because I would love it if the Colts got in on this sweepstakes. I think Aiyuk could actually like playing here because Shane Steichen's a good offensive head coach, but I'd love it if the Colts got in on this sweepstakes. I don't think they're going to, though. I got more on that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Coming up, top of the hour, 11 o'clock sharp. Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts joins me. That's coming up here in like 20 minutes or so. And then right after that at 11:20, Zack Gray, ZG the Grapevine, professional sports gambler. He joins me at 11:20, not to talk sports gambling, but to talk Ohio State, Michigan, that Michigan cheating scandal. Cannot wait to get him riled up about this. Should be a lot of fun. But before we get to that, I want to continue on this Brandon Aiyuk trail of thought that I was having on, he's going to be traded. It looks like it's going to happen today. Cleveland or New England, those are kind of his two choices. And man, classic case of be careful what you wish for. I think he's going to be unhappy wherever he ends up, and I would personally love it if the Colts got in on this sweepstakes, but that's not going to happen. And the more that I look at this Colts roster, the better I feel about parts of it and the worse I feel about others. Okay, I promise this isn't going to be a rant on how they need to go sign Justin Simmons. Otter Creek telling me I need to go buy a Justin Simmons jersey if they sign him. I might. I'll be excited if they do. But anyway, when it comes to the Colts and looking at these weapons, I think going and getting a guy like Brandon Aiyuk would obviously help, because anytime you add an explosive player like that to your roster, you immediately become a better offensive team. Okay, you do. That's why I really like that the Patriots are being aggressive and trying to sign Brandon Aiyuk, because they have a young quarterback in Drake May who struggled so far through camp. And I'm sure that part of that is because their best receiver is second-round pick Jalen Polk. And I'm sure if they brought in Brandon Aiyuk, it'd make life a little bit easier on Drake May. And when it comes to the Colts, however, would he help? Of course he would. But he's not needed. He's a nice convertible. Pull it out in the summertime, roll the top down, feel the wind through your hair, throw on some nice sunglasses, and just look cool. Okay, that's what Brandon Aiyuk is. That's what he'd be for this Colts team, at least. He'd be a nice convertible. But if he went to New England, if he went to play for the Patriots, he would be an SUV, something reliable, something that was leaned on and dependable. That's what he would have to be, because that's what the Patriots need. They need a legitimate number one wide receiver. Meanwhile, if he came to Indianapolis, he'd just be a luxury. He would be. Okay, I'm very hard on Michael Pittman Jr. I think he's a really good 2. Don't think he's quite a 1. I say all that, but if you disagree with me, you can very easily say, Jonathan, he had 100 receptions and went for over 1,000 receiving yards last year. That sounds like a number one wide receiver to me. And I would be like, you know what? Fair enough. So, as much as I'd love for the Colts to go get Brandon Aiyuk, he's just not needed. Okay? Now, to be fair, you can never have enough weapons. Do I wish they had more weapons? Of course I do. Of course I do. But let's be honest, the Colts' needs are on the defensive side of the ball. Zach Hicks joining me at the top of the hour here in about 15 minutes. And we're going to talk Colts. I'm sure that free safety position is going to come up. Sorry, but I know that it is. Staying in the world of the NFL, I want to move over to Pittsburgh. I want to talk about the Steelers. More specifically, I want to talk about Justin Fields, who has been at the heart of the NFL conversation really all offseason, right? Because there was this heavy debate between do the Bears roll with Justin Fields or do they trade him away and then go sign and then draft Caleb Williams, which is what they opted to do. I'm telling you right now, that was the proper decision. Okay, and there's Justin Fields propaganda all over my Twitter timeline every time I tune in. Every time that I tune in or get on Twitter, there's some video of Justin Fields making some very basic throw, and people are just, raving on and on about how great Justin Fields looks and how, the Chicago Bears made a terrible mistake and all that kind of stuff. Here's the reality on Justin Fields. I believe that Justin Fields is going to end up being the starter in Pittsburgh over Russell Wilson at some point. Mike Tomlin's pretty hard-headed. when they made the acquisition of Russell Wilson, he was like, yeah, he's going to be our starter week 1. So that probably means that Russell Wilson's going to be the starter week 1. But Russell Wilson is not a popular guy. A lot of people don't like Russell Wilson. He's kind of weird, right? When he was playing in Seattle, guys would want to hang out, and he'd be like, you got to talk to my people first. When Richard Sherman had a podcast, he tried to get Russell Wilson on the pod. And Russell Wilson was like, you got to talk to my people first. He's weird. People just don't like him. And then there's Justin Fields, who's a guy's guy. Justin Fields is an athlete that every other athlete in the world respects because athletes value athleticism. And if you don't believe me, let's just look at the NFL top 100 list, where Tyreek Hill, arguably the most explosive athlete in the NFL, one of the most explosive athletes we've ever seen, was voted as the best player in the NFL, even though you know and I know that the best player is Patrick Mahomes, who wasn't even voted the best quarterback. Who was voted as the best quarterback in the NFL? The most athletic quarterback in the NFL, Lamar Jackson. That is something that players value. And so I just know that the Steelers, this whole team, they're showing up at practice and they're seeing Justin Fields in that 4.4 speed. They're seeing him leave linebackers and safeties in the dust on long scrambles. They're seeing him throw the ball 60 yards down the field, something that Russell Wilson struggles to do now that he's older. Okay? He's going to win that locker room. And when he and Russell Wilson play about the same, they're going to wind up going with the younger, more athletic quarterback. That's what's going to happen. Justin Fields is going to be the starter in Pittsburgh at some point. But that doesn't mean that the Bears made the wrong decision. If Justin Fields has a good year this year, which is possible, I don't think it's going to happen. But if he has a good year this year and Caleb Williams struggles, I just know my mentions are going to be horrendous because I'm very much on the side of playing Caleb Williams. And I was very much in favor of the Bears drafting Caleb Williams because he's the best quarterback prospect that we've seen probably since Andrew Luck. Okay? And here's the thing. If Caleb Williams comes out and he struggles and Justin Fields plays well, it doesn't mean that the Bears made the wrong decision. Okay? It is not uncommon for rookie quarterbacks to struggle. And Pittsburgh is going to make life easy on whoever their quarterback is because of the way that they play football. They're going to run the ball well. They've got a good offensive line. They've got 2 good running backs. Okay, that whoever's playing quarterback for the Steelers, whether it's Fields or Wilson, they're going to turn their back to that defense a lot, and they're just going to give it to the running back because that's a reliable source of offense for the Steelers. They also hired Arthur Smith to be their new offensive coordinator. You guys remember him when he was in Tennessee, ran the ball all the time. He got to Atlanta, and guess what he did? He continued to run the football. Okay, so they're going to do that. They also play great defense because it's Pittsburgh. Okay, the Steelers could grab 11 random dudes off the street, and they would still play good defense because that's just what the Pittsburgh Steelers do. So if you're a Justin Fields apologist, don't toot your horn too early. Okay, if he's the starter in week 3, you're going to be excited, which is fine. You're allowed to be excited. But Caleb Williams is the better prospect, and he's the better player. Okay, for me, Justin Fields probably going to be the starter at some point in Pittsburgh. But it's going to be more of the same stuff that we saw in Chicago. Bad decisions post-snap. His legs are going to be more reliable than his ability to throw the football. And look, it's hard to win regular season games, yet alone playoff games, with a quarterback that is incapable of throwing the football well. That leads me to Anthony Richardson. I was very adamant earlier in the show that I think that Anthony Richardson needs to play a lot during the preseason because he just needs as many live reps as possible, because the more reps that you get in the actual situation that you're going to be in, the better you're going to be. Like, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if, to start the season, Will Levis was a little bit better than Anthony Richardson, because Will Levis played 9 games last year and Anthony Richardson only played 12 quarters. Okay, the more reps you have, the better off you're going to be, especially when you're 22 years old, like Anthony Richardson is. Okay, and here's my biggest thing with Anthony Richardson. Here's my biggest thing with the Colts and whether or not they're going to be a playoff team this year or potentially win this division. The question isn't about the Colts' ability to run the football. I think they're going to run the ball extremely well. Okay, Jonathan Taylor, hopefully he's healthy this year. Hopefully he plays in all 17 games. Because if he does, he's probably going to rush for 1,000 yards. Okay, it's just what he does when he's healthy, right? He hasn't been these last 2 years, so need a full healthy season from him. And if we get that, then the Colts are going to run the ball well between him and Anthony Richardson and Trey Sermon and the rest of these backup running backs. They're going to be fine. But the question is going to be in their ability to throw the football. Okay, teams that go 10-7, which is probably what this Colts, that's probably the ceiling. Maybe they go 11-6. But teams that go, 10-7 usually play a lot of close games. Games where you need to move the football down the field in the final 2.5 minutes and kick a field goal to win. Okay? And in those situations, you can't really run the ball. You can't. You have to have the ability to drop back and throw the football consistently. And that is where the questions are for Anthony Richardson. Okay, his completion percentage wasn't very good last year. It wasn't. So that is the thing that we have to see. It seems like over the past week, Anthony Richardson struggled just a little bit more in these 11-on-11 settings. He was 3 for 6 yesterday, just not very consistent in throwing the football. And that has to change. Okay, yes, Josh Allen, one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the league. He has these, he has the ability to take off and run. So does Mahomes. A lot of these guys do. But the best quarterbacks in the NFL consistently drop back, stand in the pocket, and deliver the ball on time and on target. Okay, the NFL has evolved a lot over these past, however many years. Really since, the end of the Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning era. It's really moved towards these athletic quarterbacks, and people get really excited about them, which is cool. Okay. It's way easier to get excited about an Anthony Richardson type guy than a Peyton Manning, right? Because with Peyton Manning, you know exactly what you're getting. You're going to get a guy who's going to stand in the pocket, and if he can throw the ball, then he's going to be good. And if he can't, then it's going to be rough. Whereas with Anthony Richardson, he just provides a little bit more hope because of the running ability and definitely more excitement. But here's the thing. Some things are constant. Some things never change. Okay? In the NBA, height and length is always going to be prominent. It's never going to change. The NBA is never going to pivot to short guys with short arms. It's never going to happen. And in the NFL, it's never going to pivot to quarterbacks that run the ball better than they throw it. Okay, you have to be able to throw the ball consistently to win in the NFL. And that is the biggest question that I have for the Colts this season. Okay, because I've talked a lot about the defense. Okay, the defense is definitely a concern. But, the Colts can have the worst defense in the league. They can have the best defense in the league. It won't matter if Anthony Richardson can't throw the ball consistently. And that is where the faith in Shane Steichen comes out in me. Okay, because I saw him in Philadelphia figure out ways to put Jalen Hurts in, good position to throw the football. Now, then again, the Eagles had A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I would argue one of the better receiving duos in the NFL. That makes things a little bit easier. Okay, but, this Colts team, they're not short on weapons. Michael Pittman Jr. is good. He's not A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, but, he's good. Josh Downs, people are excited for him in year 2. I know I am. He was good last year in his rookie year. If Adonai Mitchell can be, decent, then, they should be fine. So, Anthony Richardson, got to throw the ball well. I want to see him play in these preseason games. Okay, and I don't want to see him run. I don't. Okay, if he's playing in the preseason, I want him to do nothing but throw the ball. I don't care if he's 8 for 16 with 3 interceptions. No, stand in the pocket and work on delivering the football because the ability to run, it fades at some point. And when you're 22, you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 years before it starts to fade. But at some point, we're going to have to reach a point where Anthony Richardson is able to stand in the pocket, deliver the ball on time and on target. And when it comes to preseason games, that is the thing that I want to see. I don't want to see a Justin Fields type performance where Anthony Richardson, scrambles, for 30 yards, twice. That's not what I want to see. I want to see him stand in the pocket and look to throw the football because that's what the best quarterbacks in the NFL do. Zach Hicks coming up here in 5 minutes to talk Colts. Anthony Richardson, the preseason. Quandre Dix to the Titans. All that fun stuff. Zach Hicks joining me here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hour number 2 is here. Ready to go. Zach Hicks, Locked On Colts, also writes about the Colts as well. Just a very talented guy. Wouldn't have him on the show if he wasn't. He joins me. Zach, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. How's it going?
It's going really well, especially since you notified me of some news that I missed, and I'm seeing what looks like an article from Destin Adams, who covers the Colts. Simmons potentially coming to the Colts. What were your thoughts when you saw the report from Benjamin Albright that Justin Simmons is looking AFC South?
Yeah. So again, we have to treat every single rumor at this time of year with a grain of salt, because obviously we have the L'Jarius Sneed saga, firmly behind us, the Jonathan Taylor stuff from last year, where I feel like Taylor was traded to 4 different teams like multiple times last offseason. So we have to treat everything with a grain of salt. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense for Simmons to be picking a team here pretty soon. I mean, we're past the halfway point of training camp for most teams, and the offers aren't just going to be there all season long for him, especially as teams, solidify some extensions and use up some of their cap space. So it makes sense for him to sign this week or next week, whatever it's going to be. And, AFC South makes a ton of sense. I mean, we've talked about it plenty of times on this show, how the Colts are probably the team in the league that needs Simmons the most. I mean, among any other team in football right now, they have the money to do it. They have the scheme that necessitates a guy like that at the top playing free safety. And it would be a good fit for him to showcase what he can do. And, if he gets like a 1-year deal, he can hit the market again next year, maybe after a good year, and really cash in. So, look, I hope it's the Colts, man. I'm not going to get all, too excited and saying it's 100% happening, but like, I hope it ends up being the Colts. We'll see. All I really know is everyone who listens to this show and anyone just in the Colts fan base, if Justin Simmons signs with like the Texans or the Jaguars, I can't imagine what that reaction is going to be like.
Oh man,
that
people
would
are going to be so
the crazy.
upset. It would be. Yeah. People would be livid, man. Like I know I would be. I've been, I wouldn't say I'm Chris Ballard's biggest fan. I think there are some things he does well. I think there are some things that he doesn't do well, including going out, being aggressive, and signing free agents. At what point is it fair to be frustrated about Chris Ballard not being aggressive in that regard of whether it's trading for L'Jarius Sneed or signing a guy like Justin Simmons?
Yeah, I'm with you completely on that. I do think that's one of the bigger areas that he has failed as a GM. And I think overall, like, my perception on him is fairly positive. I mean, he's been dealt a pretty bad hand in a lot of ways in terms of his quarterback retiring early. I know we can't use that forever, but yeah, it happened. Like it certainly happened. It's hard to find a quarterback. I mean, I grew up a fan of the Washington Commanders. You know how long they've been looking for a quarterback? Like, it's tough to find a quarterback, especially when one leaves you at the altar like that. So it was a difficult situation, and I don't really fault him too much for how he dealt with the quarterback position. But when it came to the spots around the roster, aside from that, yes, I think he has the overall right mindset of preaching development in-house and building up guys that you draft and then rewarding those guys with contracts when they're completely worth it. And we've seen that policy really work out. Michael Pittman Jr., well-deserved of a nice contract, and that contract looks really good right now, considering what they extended him at. Drafting a guy like Grover Stewart, drafting guys like Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, finding Kenny Moore on the waiver wire. Like, these are great moves, savvy moves that brought next level contributors to this team. But I'm with you in terms of free agency, where like eventually you gotta take some shots. And I'm not saying he's never signed anybody, because he has signed some players, obviously, but like, you can't be scared of the bad deal. If you make a bad deal every now and then, you live with it and you move on from there. But like, sometimes you got to overpay to get a different talent in here. Sometimes you have to be aggressive and say, you know what, we like what this young player can bring us, but like, we need to have an insurance plan in case it doesn't work out. Because what if, if we're looking at the safety position, for instance, this year, what if Nick Cross doesn't work out? What if this guy that, you invested in, you took him in the 3rd round a couple years ago, you want him to succeed, but if he doesn't, you don't have anybody behind him. You don't have any other option really to put out there. Whereas if you were, being like forward thinking with that. You would have brought in another veteran. You would have brought in someone behind them, or again, you bring in a starter like Justin Simmons to where you don't have to worry about that. Like, you have insurance plans for these things. But we've seen with the Colts in Chris Ballard's tenure, especially the last like 4 or 5 years, where it's like there's always one or two positions every single year where it's like they're relying on a very unproven young guy that he's drafted. And most of the times that doesn't work out. And when it doesn't work out, they don't have, they didn't even bring in like depth in free agency that could, step in and be adequate for them. They relied so much on that young player working out. And if it doesn't, it's like, man, we don't have really any other option. And they're stuck throwing out, Ronnie Harrison, the linebacker at safety back there or something like that. So I think that's really where my big thing is. It's not that he I understand not wanting to rely so much on free agency to fill out everything, but the neglect of it, I think, is what really hurts your team in the long run, and just not building insurance plans for your younger options on the roster. I think that's where he's really struggled as a GM. And honestly, outside of quarterback, I think that's really his only big struggle he's had as a GM.
Yeah, I'm with you, joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts, also writes about the Colts as well. I'm completely with you. I think that it's like, I guess my mind just works differently. Maybe this is why I'd be a bad GM. It's like, as soon as I heard that we're playing a linebacker at free safety, a guy who hasn't played free safety since high school, I'd have been like, we got to go get somebody immediately. And so,
right.
That's, I'm completely with you on that. Moving to the preseason, which starts on Sunday. I'm excited. Like, I know it's just the preseason, but I can't wait for it. I'm of the opinion that Anthony Richardson needs as many live reps as possible. Like, he threw 84 passes last year. Training camp's great, but at some point, like, you got to do the real thing where you can actually be hit. I think he should play at least a series, maybe 2 on Sunday. Where are you at on how much Anthony Richardson and the rest of the starters should play on Sunday?
Yeah, so I always struggle a lot with preseason because on one hand, like going back to the Matt Ryan season, for instance, with the Colts, like, we should have known something was up with that team when how horrible they were in the preseason. Yeah. So, like, that should have been the precursor to what was to come, because, like, we all tried to write off that preseason performance with the starting offense. Like, it'll be fine once the regular season kicks off. And it was absolutely not fine whatsoever. No, so maybe, no, not at all. But maybe they needed a little bit more preseason, a little bit more live reps together to really, I don't know, be a little bit better. I don't know how much better it could have been. But, it's tough, man, with preseason, because these aren't reps that really matter that much. Like, they matter in terms of guys getting their legs under them, but, like, the games don't count, the stats don't count, stuff like that. And the interesting thing with Richardson is, like, I'm with you where, yes, I want him out there. I want him to feel live football again. I don't want him to take a bunch of hits, but I want him to take, like, some contact in terms of just feeling, defenders on him again and stuff like that, and understanding the live action feel of the game again. But the other hand, if you say you want to play him for like a quarter, which I know is more than what you just said, but like, say there are people out there who want to play him for like a quarter, well, you have to play the other starters with him. You can't play backups in front of him, or you're just asking him to get hit. And at that point, do you want like a near 30-year-old Quentin Nelson playing a quarter of a preseason game? Do you want Braden Smith, who's almost 30 and dealt with his injuries the last couple of years? Ryan Kelly, who is at like 6 concussions in his career, it feels like. It's a tough thing that you need to find. I think a good, like, a series or two, or if it ends up spanning a quarter, like that series or two, like you said there, I think that's perfectly fine for him, because, again, you want to get these guys some action together. But ultimately, if it comes down to, like, if one of these guys takes a big hit or something, it's like, okay, get him out. Like, let's be safe with this here. I get too nervous, especially with this team, man. These guys, man, I don't know what it is with this team. But, like, the injuries just pile up so much in the offseason. It just frustrates me so much. So I always get nervous when the preseason games get started. So I'm like, okay, who are we going to lose going into this game? Yeah. But, yeah, I'm with you. I want to get him some live action reps. And if it is a series or two and that ends up spanning, like, the first quarter, then that's fine by me. Just be safe with it. Be careful with it. And don't expose him to anything like, too much or whatever that leads to injury.
Joined by Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts, also writes about the Colts as well. This might be a dumb question, but I'm kind of fascinated by it. Do you think that the bye week being all the way out in week 14 is going to impact how much these guys play in the preseason?
Ooh, maybe. That's actually a good question. I haven't thought of that. I think it could. I know Shane Steichen is pretty good at, he's someone where he doesn't like to ramp things up too much on these guys. I know a lot of like the off-season stuff is kind of designed that way, where they're trying to, limit some injuries so these guys aren't doing too much full contact, obviously, in practice anymore. But Shane Steichen's always been pretty good. I think he's carried a lot of those good principles that he had in Philly in terms of like when to ramp it up, how to ramp it up, and when to give these guys, good rest days and stuff like that. So I have no doubt that he's going to keep these guys fresh throughout the season up until that time that the bye week comes. But it's a grueling time, man. 14 weeks until your bye week? That's a grueling stretch of games where you really don't get a break. I know there's a couple, short weeks in there and stuff too. So, that'll be interesting to see if that impacts it at all. I mean, what we've seen with Steichen, what we've seen with just teams in general the last couple of years, I wouldn't expect any starters to play in the third preseason game anyway.
Yeah. But
I wonder if it is going to be like a series or two for the starters in each of the two games, and then that's it for the whole preseason. That might be it. I'm not too sure how they're going to go about it, but that'd be interesting to see if that impacts it all. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I saw it. I was like, that's 16 straight weeks of NFL football, and even if it is the preseason, it's like those are still hits. Those are still, car crashes as the NFL players call them. And so I saw that. I was like, I wonder if that's going to impact what they do. We'll see. Either way, we're going to see a lot of backups. I know you've done a lot of Colts draft coverage over these past couple years. Is there a backup that you're like, I want to see this specific backup play?
Yeah, I think a lot of the rookies, you obviously want to see them out there. I think wide receiver Anthony Gould has made a name for himself this training camp so far, just catching a lot of passes down the field. And when it comes to Colts depth receivers under Chris Ballard, we're typically used to like the Mike Straughns, the Des Patmans, the Deion Keynes, the Darius Fountains, those big, like stronger receivers that can go up and win the jump ball. But we haven't really seen a guy like Gould, who's like this 4'3", like extremely twitchy, explosive player at the bottom of the roster. So I think when you're throwing him out there with these bottom of the roster guys in the preseason, I think he's going to make some plays out there. On defense, the rookie corners, Micah Abraham and Jalen Simpson, I'm really excited to see those guys out there. I've heard some pretty good things about them in camp so far, especially with Simpson making the change to corner. So I'm excited to see those guys. And then this isn't a rookie, but just a player who I just enjoy seeing him on the football field because he's such a violent player. But Segun Alubi at linebacker, he did get the one start last year against Carolina and had a couple tackles and pick in that game. But he's a fun player, man. He comes downhill recklessly and powerful, and he loves to hit. So he'll be a fun guy to watch in the preseason because you'll see at the end of the game, you'll have like 10 tackles because he'll just be involved in every single game, every single play. But yeah, those are some guys that really stand out for the backups. I mean, obviously we all want to see AD Mitchell and Leatu Latu though, like just seeing them in Colts gear and on the football field, especially from what we've heard with Latu in training camp so far, like it wouldn't surprise me if he had a couple sacks in the preseason just because he's had that good of an off season so far.
Yeah, I'm obviously very, very, very excited for the rookies. Are you at all interested in Kenny Slavis versus Sam Ehlinger?
I don't think it's super close for right now. From what I've heard, it sounds like, when the third team comes out, it's pretty much all Ehlinger at this point, and Slavis is mostly been with the developmental team. But I do think they have him, like their eye on him for a practice squad spot. So I don't think it's that close, but look, Keaton Slavis, man, his freshman season at USC was special. Had that connection with Michael Pittman Jr. and Amon-Ra St. Brown and all those guys there. If he can just find a little bit of that, he can be a pretty good quarterback. It's been so long since then. But yeah, he's a really intriguing player. I think he'll be around with the Colts next year in some capacity for sure.
Okay, last question, Zach, and I will let you go. Well, I guess there's two questions here. Do you gamble? Let's start there.
Oh man, I try not to get. Every time I play a video game that has gambling in it, I gamble too much. So I think that's why I stay away from it when it comes to actual gambling. But I know of gambling.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I was going to ask you, or if the answer was yes, I'm about to have my gambling guy on, I was like, are you a big enough degenerate to gamble on like a preseason game? Because there's people out there who are, which I don't understand.
Oh man, I couldn't do it. I mean, I think the only time I could have done it was, like I said, I grew up a Washington fan. Like when Colt McCoy would come in, it's like, oh, this is like a third string quarterback who's better than everybody else. Like Washington's gonna win. But like, unless you have something like that, I have no. Maybe you can bet on the Ravens because they actually care about the preseason wins or whatever it was. They had like that 20-something game win streak. But oh man, I couldn't do it. I've seen enough preseason games where teams are like, they have a chance to have a tie game at the end of a game or whatever, and they just try to go for two just so it doesn't end up tied. I'd be so mad if I were gambling on that. Like if you're doing like a pick 'em and it's like, oh, they could have gone to overtime or tied or something. I don't know. But yeah, that yeah, I can't do it, man. I can't gamble in preseason. It doesn't matter enough to me.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Last thing for real. Colts over under is set at 8.5. Do you like the over or the under on that?
Oh man, that's such a good over under. This is why Vegas takes money from people right there.
That's right.
That's a good over under. I would lean over because I know I tend to be a little optimistic with what this offense can be with Richardson and Taylor and obviously Steichen at the helm. But it really comes down to health. Like if we see an injury again, I could definitely see them falling a little bit below that, especially with the secondary too on defense. Like if they just don't progress in any positive way, I could certainly see them below that. But I'll tentatively say over. I'll say like 10. I think 10's a good spot for me right now, but we'll have to play that by ear for sure. I'll change it, by week 17, week 18, and make sure
Sounds
I
good.
landed pretty good with that one.
Sounds good. Zach, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, of course. Anytime, man.
See it. That was Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. He also writes and covers the Colts. Follow him on Twitter at Zack Hicks2 to see all of his stuff. It's a day full of Zachs here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. He joins me next. He's also an Ohio State fan, so it might get ugly when we talk a little bit of Michigan. That's coming your way here in about 3 minutes. It's the end of summer sale with Zero Res. Get your entire home Zero Resified from Indy's Ultimate Carpet Cleaner and get 3 rooms of carpet clean starting at just $119. And it's the perfect time of year to get your air ducts cleaned with 20% off your air duct cleaning. Cleaning your air ducts helps alleviate allergies and asthma. Less dust, lower energy bills, and your home will stay cleaner longer. Book now with ZeroResIndy.com or call 317-388-5141 and ask for the Indy's Sports Ticket Special.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Zack Gray at ZG the Grapevine on Twitter. He joins me. I got a question from Gritty. Shout out Gritty, longtime listener. Yes, he's better than the Sack Man. All right, what's going on, Zach? You doing good?
I recorded your last 4 shows to be my best self for today. I know all of your segments already, just so you know.
Okay, all right. So you heard my thoughts on Michigan yesterday.
I did.
What'd you think? Let's just start there. For some audience knows, you were born and raised in Ohio. You are an Ohio State Buckeye through and through. Just so they know, what were your thoughts on what I said yesterday?
Well, since they know I'm an Ohio State fan, let's go over your thoughts first so they know that as well, real quick.
So here's my thing. Everyone's going to forget in 3 or 4 years that Michigan cheated, except for Ohio State fans and Michigan fans, because that's just
unbelievable.
That's just what happens. Okay, like no one talks.
I just wanted to hear you say it out loud. Again.
Let me finish.
Do we forget about the Astros, Jay Smith?
We don't talk about it. We don't talk about the Red Sox when they stole signs in 2018. We don't discredit Tom Brady for Spygate. We don't discredit Tom Brady for Deflategate. At some point, we forget, and here's what's going to happen. And 5 years, however long it takes, I'm going to be sitting around with a bunch of my buddies, and we're going to be like, hey, do you guys remember the 2023 Michigan team? They had all those NFL guys, a first-round quarterback, Jim Harbaugh, one of the better coaches in the sport. And we're going to be like, yeah, that team was really talented, and they were really good. They blew out everybody not named Alabama and Ohio State. And then you're going to be there, and you're going to be like, yeah, because they cheated. So,
all right.
I'm just going to give you the floor.
So I think you're underestimating. I think this is more of a national story than it's just going to be Ohio State and Michigan fans. Remember, the difference with those examples that you used, for Tom Brady's example, he did it, a ton more after. The Red Sox, they weren't, found as completely complicit as the Astros. And, they didn't win the World Series, with that. They were connected to it, but it wasn't as big as the Astros, and even if we look at the Patriots, people still bring up Spygate and Deflategate. People haven't forgotten that. People haven't forgotten the Astros. But the difference here is that all of a sudden, and it's going to be very dependent on how they do in the future here, this season going, past this season. If they stink again, if they're a 8-9 win team like they were before this run, there's no doubt about it that that's going to be the everlasting reason why they had the run that they had. I don't even think it's a matter of did they do it at this point. I think any reasonable and rational person knows that they did this.
Oh, yeah.
And I think any reasonable or rational person understands that the program knew about this from the top down. It's just a matter of what you can prove. And if you can prove it to the full extent, then, they should be punished to the full extent, because if the punishment doesn't fit the crime, again, for a high major sports league, sign stealing, cheating scandal, then we'll keep seeing this. Like the punishment has to fit the crime. If the punishment in the Astros example is basically immunity for telling the truth, or, if Michigan, if they aren't harsh penalties that affect the program, and set the program, kind of back to where they were post cheating in terms of leveling the playing field, I guess is then why wouldn't other teams implement this and say, you know what, even if we do get caught, we have precedent that we aren't going to get hit, by any crazy punishment. So I don't think it's about, obviously I hate Michigan and I think they're cheaters, but
yeah,
I think this extends past Michigan. you have to set an example for something like this. This is the biggest cheating scandal, on-field cheating scandal that we have ever seen in college football history. We have to take that serious. And if we don't take that serious, then you're opening the floodgates. We already don't trust the NCAA. We already don't think they have any control. If they come out of here looking like, daisies and roses, then, what's stopping that next team from doing this? And now the integrity of the entire game has been compromised. That sounds like I'm taking it far, but just
no, you're
think
right
about it.
Yeah, I'm
like when in the steroid era, that was wrong. It didn't get nipped in the bud, and then look what happened. Like this stuff, baseball hasn't recovered since. Like this stuff is serious, and it extends well past Michigan football if it's not handled correctly.
Yeah, I'm with you. They should be punished severely. Joined by Zack Gray, Ohio State fan, professional sports gambler. Head over to his Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. Check out his Patreon. This dude doesn't miss, does a great job. I'm with you. And here's where I think NIL becomes a bit of an issue. Because look, here's what I think is going to happen to Michigan. They'll probably give them some sort of bowl ban, and they'll strip some scholarships. Okay, because that seems to be what they do to everybody when they cheat. And Michigan's gonna be like, okay, that's fine. So instead of 85 scholarships, we now have 60 or whatever. We'll just take our massive amount of NIL money and spread it across the 60 scholarships. So they're just going to be able to pay more money to those 60 guys. So I don't even know how much it's really going to impact them if they're able to just spend more money on less dudes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure next year the scholarship and roster limit raised to like what 105,
125, I think is the number. But yeah, it goes up.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a start. And I think you're right. I think people will get creative, and I don't think that's against the rules. I would have no problem, trying to maximize the resources that you have. My idea of it is there has to be some type of tangible impact made, impact punishment that reflects on the field, because the crime, so to speak, was an on-field thing. Like this isn't about paying players. This isn't about improper benefits. This isn't about illegal recruitment, even though Michigan did that already and got punished for it. And they've shown a clear sign of disregard to the rules. That's a side note. They've already gotten in trouble before. But my point is, this is an on-the-field violation that extended for 50-something games. And one of the guys on their staff was on the sideline of another team. Like, I know that we know that's Connor Stallions now. I think anybody with a brain knew that was Connor Stallions when that picture first came out.
Yeah.
But just say that out loud slowly. They cheated so much to the fact that they had one of their staff members on the sideline of another FBS team scouting their second biggest rival. Like, just think about that. That is insane.
Yeah, I'm with you. It is insane. I'm going to ask you a question. It's going to sound like I'm defending Michigan, but I'm not. How much of that? Look, Michigan shouldn't have even attempted it. Let me say that in front. How much of it is their fault, though? Like, shouldn't Central Michigan have had someone be like, who's this guy in a fake mustache and sunglasses on a cloudy day?
Well, they did I think they did fire a couple people. CMU did. I think McElwain kind of got out of there scot-free, but I think they did fire the people that were connected to Stallions, but only after it was confirmed that it was him. So, like, yeah, I mean, what the heck, Central Michigan? Like, yeah, you don't let them on your sideline, but at the end of the day, that's the question, right? At this point, it's not whether they did it. It's about, did they eat? Is this the most unnecessary cheating of all time? Or is this the most impactful cheating of all time? Which one's more likely? I would say impactful cheating based on track record, based on everything that we know. And then the next piece of this, right, is, we have all this information that Connor Stallions is collecting. how is it getting used then if no one knows what's going on? Knowing something but not explicitly saying it doesn't absolve you from knowing. And I think that's what the report's going to kind of say about some of these guys. Like, they utilize this information. They know it came from Stallions, and you can put 2 and 2 together and figure out how he got it. So I don't think there's anyone absolved in this scenario from the top down, all the way up to the athletic director.
Yeah, your question of, once again, joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler, Ohio State fan. Check out his Patreon and his Twitter bio at ZG. The Grapevine, the dude doesn't miss. Real quick.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Quick. Can you do me a favor? I am an Ohio State fan, but can you vouch for me that I am speaking, with the least amount of bias as I can possibly have?
You are, without a doubt. I wouldn't have you on if that wasn't the case. Like, Zach, you do a great job of being even keel. I am going to push back on your question, though. Like, I don't think that Michigan needs to cheat to beat Eastern Carolina or Indiana or that awful Michigan State team last year. And, I remember when Deflategate happened, I remember my older brother being really upset because he's a Colts fan. And I would look at him and I'd be like, Caleb, they lost 41-6. I don't think it mattered that the balls were deflated. And in terms of Michigan winning a national title, like, they beat Washington 34-13. Like, it wasn't particularly close.
Yeah, here's my pushback to when I hear that, and they always, Michigan fans and people that are supporting Michigan always direct us to that quote from the college football playoff chairman or whatever, where he says, I think it's obvious this was a fair national title, and I can kind of accept that. What I can't accept is that we ignore the fact that the buildup to get to that point involved this operation. It wasn't just they started it this year, got caught midway through the season, and then ended up winning the national championship. You know how teams work. You know how momentum works. You know how chemistry works. You know how all that works inside of a team concept. That's all of that stuff. You start to get more information. You start to get a little more confident. You start to you're on the field. You're playing differently. You start to build that momentum, and it all builds on itself and it stacks on itself. So there's a lot of it's a spider web. So this starts, and now it spider webs into this unfair advantage. And now, the athletes that you do have on the field, having even more of an advantage and playing with more confidence and know exactly where they're supposed to go. So this spirals and snowballs down the hill to where now they don't really need, to do this. They have everything they need. They've built this up in a way that's illegal to the rules, and now you're here. So does that make sense? Like, this isn't just they stopped doing it and they won, so it's okay. Like, there was a build up to this.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I get what you're saying. I do want to move on real quick because I know you got to take off. You've got a real job.
I got time.
I want to move to the coaches poll, the preseason coaches poll, which came out yesterday. Any teams jump out at you? Like, I got to be honest, I thought Ohio State was going to be ranked number 1 after just the monster transfer portal season that they had. I hate that Penn State's 9th. It really upsets me because I think they're overrated every single year. Any teams jump out to you in particular?
I get that Ole Miss had a good season or a good off season, but do they feel a little high?
Yes, I'm with you. They do.
Yeah, that's probably my big thing. And then they love to just put the 5th place, 6th place SEC team in the, anywhere from 15 to 20. They just love that. They're just like, oh, this team might finish 6th in the SEC. All right, they're 17th to start the year, or whatever the case may be. And that was a shot at Tennessee, by the way.
Oh, not Texas A&M.
Well, yeah, them too, obviously, but like that, I wanted to make sure I got some Tennessee slander in there. But yeah, it's like, none of this matters, and we both know that none of it matters. But like, I wish there was more, just in general. The college football playoff is a group of experts that are familiar with the sport. I wish a lot of the college football polls, coaches, or the media polls, the awards, like the Heisman, I wish that we were just a little more I wish there was a little more gatekeeping going on about who has a say. This doesn't matter, but it does kind of reflect the sport, and it is marketing for the sport. And if you have a bunch of people saying how bad polls are, how bad Heisman voting is, why would anyone that's on the fence, wanting to watch or be a fan of college football take it serious? That's my only thing. I know I've gotten very, very philosophical on you today.
No, you're good. I like it.
That's kind of the mood you got, man, with this Michigan stuff. But yeah, that's my big thing on the polls and stuff. It's place, X brand in the SEC here. And then it kind of, before the playoff, it kind of messed with everything. But yeah, that's my thoughts on them.
Okay, fair enough. Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. Real quick, before I let you go, how is the algorithm coming along? NFL season, we're 5 Sundays away. College football season right around the corner. How is the sports gambling side of things developing?
So just as predicted, college football 25 threw a wrench. So I am not done yet. I am leading Southern. I am building Southern Mississippi up to, hopefully be the next Alabama. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. As far as the algorithm goes, should be, plenty of time. It's just not done yet. And I'm definitely procrastinating until I have to have it out. So yeah, that's me being completely honest, but it'll be done. It'll be ready. And I think the idea is to kind of give the first week, week 0, and then that first week of college football out for free on my Twitter, let you guys get a taste of what you'll see and then go from there. And, if you like it, if you succeed, you can go and sign up for the Patreon, $15 a month for every single college football, every single NFL game. You can make that back in one bet. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. So look out for that week 0, week 1 predictions and projections. I'll have, the projected score, obviously the projected total, and then kind of like implied odds versus what my odds say. So that's kind of the plan.
Okay. Last thing, and I will let you go. My favorite NFL bet is Broncos over 5.5 wins. I don't know how, if you've deep dived into the Broncos, but what are your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a stretch there last year where Peyton and the Broncos kind of figured it out. I think another year where Peyton's kind of molding the roster to his liking, what he likes, how he likes to coach. They just feel like with him, Sean Payton just feels like a guy that's always going to be 7, 8, 9 wins at the minimum. That's kind of the floor for a guy like him. So I definitely can see it.
Okay, sounds good. Zach, thanks for your time as always. I always appreciate it. I appreciate your non-biased opinion on Ohio State. Sounded sarcastic. I wasn't trying to be sarcastic. I was trying to be sincere there.
We'll hopefully there's more positivity from me next Friday, but I had to say my piece.
Fair enough. Hey, I get it, man. Thanks for your time, dude.
See you, bro.
See ya. That is Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG The Grapevine. Subscribe to his Patreon. I'm telling you, that dude doesn't miss, man. He does a great job, does all the research so that you don't have to. Check out his Patreon. He's had a great year in college basketball, and I know he's going to run it back this year for college football. So coming back here in about 4 minutes, back to the Colts preseason on the brink. Going to get into all that coming up here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Shout out to the two Zacks. Zack Hicks joined me at 11, host of Locked On Colts. Talk Colts preseason. Justin Simmons coming to the Colts, maybe. We'll see. Should hopefully find out by the end of the week. Zack Gray joined from Ohio State fan. We talked the Michigan cheating scandal. Once again, sorry that I'm not super upset about it. They were the best team in the country either way. Okay. Did they need to cheat? No, but they did. And ultimately, I don't really think that it mattered. I really don't. They were the best team in the country. They were physical. They pushed everybody around. And, they had a first-round quarterback at the helm. Like, they were a dominant football team. They crushed everybody. They beat Washington, the supposed second-best team in the country, 34-13 in the national title game. Okay, they ran through everybody. Everybody. So, sorry that I'm not more torn up about it. Moving on to the Colts and Anthony Richardson and, the preseason starting on Sunday. The Colts should play their starters at least a little bit this week. Okay, maybe not a full quarter, but for at least a drive or two. That's. I think they should do it every game because I think Anthony Richardson needs as many reps as possible because repetition is an important thing. Okay, repetition in like an actual game where you're able to get hit. Okay, like repetition is how you get better at anything. Okay, that's just the way that life works. That's how we progress. Okay, like I played baseball for a long time. How did I get better? Through going to the cage and hitting and facing live pitchers and playing in games. Like that's how I got better, through repetition. When it comes to my current job, radio, I podcasted for 4 years before I had an opportunity to do live radio. And look, podcasting, it's not live radio. Just like how training camp isn't the actual game. It's not. They're very different from one another, even though it feels like they're similar. When it comes to training camp, everything is planned out to a T. We're going to come out, we're going to stretch for this long, and then we're going to go offensive and defensive drills in your position groups, and then we're going to come together, and we're going to do 7-on-7, and we're going to work on this specific set of plays, and then from there we'll move into 11-on-11. These are all the plays that we're going to run, and then we'll move into 2-minute drill, and we're going to run all these plays, and then there you go, good practice, see you guys tomorrow. Okay, that's what practice looks like. It is planned out. You have an idea of what you're getting yourself into before it even starts. Games, whether it's preseason, regular season, divisional opponent, a team in a different conference, the playoffs, whatever, live actual games where Anthony Richardson doesn't get to walk around in a red "Don't Touch Me" jersey, very different. Comes at you fast. Every decision you make is just a little bit more important. Okay? In training camp, you see the same defenders every day. And I think that leads you to falling into a sort of lull. Like even when I was playing college baseball, this is what would happen. Okay, you see the same pitchers every day, and the pitchers are throwing to the same hitters, and you see a guy enough, eventually you're like, okay, I know he likes to throw this pitch. I know this is his out pitch. I know that if he gets me 0-2, I know he's going to throw me a hard slider. It's like, oh, that's not working today. That means he's probably going to go to the splitter. Okay, you learn your opponent so well to a point where it kind of becomes hard to get better, if that makes sense. And this is why I believe that Anthony Richardson needs as many live reps as possible, right? Because in training camp, if he doesn't identify that Zaire Franklin is coming on a Mike Blitz right up the middle, if he doesn't identify it, then Zaire Franklin runs through the hole and he touches Anthony Richardson on the chest, and then the whistle blows, and that's it. There's really no punishment for not identifying things. Whereas preseason game, they're playing the Broncos. Forgive me, I don't know who the Broncos middle linebacker is, but if he doesn't identify that blitz and he gets popped, there's actual punishment for what happens. And that is something that young players especially need to go through. Okay, Anthony Richardson needs as many live reps as possible, not against the Colts defense. And part of that is because this Colts defense isn't very good. The other part of it is Anthony Richardson didn't play much last year. Okay, this is a point that I know I've been harping on for a while. He threw 84 passes last year and only completed 59% of them. That's it. That doesn't exactly scream to me that he's ready to go. Okay? This isn't, the Jets where Aaron Rodgers has thrown, over 1,000 passes in his NFL career. Okay? Like he doesn't need to play in the preseason. Anthony Richardson, he does. Okay? Once again, he doesn't need to play a full game. He doesn't need to play a full quarter. Just a couple drives here and there, help him to get into that rhythm, help him just to get used to seeing real defenses, getting him used to suffering the consequences of not properly reading things pre-snap. That is something that needs to happen, but I don't know if it will. The Colts bye week is in week 14, which has to suck. Okay, it does. All right, like the Colts are getting ready to play 16 straight weeks of football if you include the preseason. That's a lot of football. That used to be an entire NFL season with no break. 16 straight weeks of hard practice preparing for teams and opponents. Like it wears on you. And I'm very curious to know, this is why, part of me wishes we were out at camp because I would totally ask Shane Steichen this question. Does the fact that the bye week being all the way out in week 14, does that impact how much we're going to see these starters play in the preseason? Okay, because, if the bye week was week 5, week 6, week 7, hey, we can run the guys out there. They can play. We got a bye week in like a month. Not a big deal. I think that would have an impact on whether or not these guys play during the preseason. But since this bye week is so far out, like we're months away from it, that leads me to believe that I just don't think that the Colts are going to be willing to put extra wear and tear on these guys when they're about to play 16 weeks straight. So that's a lot of football to play consecutively. And then, like, if you're playing that many weeks in a row, like, there's going to be major concern for the Colts around weeks 6 through 13. Or, excuse me, weeks 8 through 13. That's 6 straight weeks. Because that is where guys kind of start to get banged up. That's where you get that really annoying bruise on your thigh that just won't go away because you keep getting hit there over and over and over again. Okay, that's where guys start to miss games with soft tissue injuries and things of that nature. The wear and tear of the season starts to weigh on you around that time. And that, for me, knowing when this Colts bye week is all the way out in week 14, that is the most important stretch of the Colts season. Can they win games when injuries start piling up? Can Anthony Richardson, because hopefully he's still playing quarterback during this time, weeks 8 through 13, can he elevate this Colts offense when, Bernard Raymond, starting left tackle, is out because he tweaked his ankle, right? And it's all swollen up and he can't play. Can he elevate the offense then? Can he elevate the offense when, when Michael Pittman Jr. bruised his ribs 2 weeks ago and he still isn't ready to go? Can he elevate the offense to a win? Right? And I'm asking these questions and I'm coming back to this point of like, I'd like to see him play in the preseason so that I know if he can do that or not. But at the same time, that bye week being so far out, I just feel like Shane Steichen and really younger coaches in general across the NFL, this really started when Sean McVay became the head coach of the Rams. Like younger coaches, like they don't really play their starters during the preseason. Okay, I believe it was the second year Sean McVay was the head coach of the Rams. He's like, you know what? Starters, you're not playing at all in the preseason. And then they started the year 8-0. Okay, and I think ever since then, head coaches have been way more willing to be like, you know what? No, you guys not playing. Sorry. Meanwhile, older coaches are like, you got to build up some sort of. You got to get used to getting hit, right? And so their older coaches are a little more willing to play their guys, but younger coaches like Shane Steichen tend to not be. And that bye week being so far out, I think it's going to lead to us seeing less of the starters during the preseason. Which, look, I got to be honest. Like I said, I think they should play, but I don't really care. I just want them to win games. That's really all that I want. I do think one of the advantages that the Colts have this year, despite that bye week being so far out, they've got a relatively younger roster. Like a lot of their players that are actually going to contribute are under the age of 30. Okay, I feel like once you hit that point, that's when NFL players kind of start to regress a little bit in terms of their ability. But young dudes, they just regenerate a little bit quicker. Okay, they do. They wake up 2-3 days after a game and they're fine. They're ready to go. Their bodies just heal a little bit quicker. Okay, so not having, 35-year-old Travis Kelce or however old he is, like that's an advantage that the Colts have. Okay, like their better players should bounce back just a little bit quicker given that they're younger, and young people just tend to recover a little bit quicker. So going to be interesting to see what the Colts do this weekend. Do they play the starters at all? Do they sit them the entire preseason? How do they go about that process? I don't know. We'll find out. That game coming up Sunday, man. We've got, more preseason football Thursday night. I almost said tomorrow night, but today is not Wednesday. Today is Tuesday, and I know what you're thinking, Jonathan, it's Tuesday. You didn't do Top 10 Tuesday. I'm going to do it tomorrow instead because I had some good interviews today. Podcast should be up shortly. Coming up 5 minutes, the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3. This has been the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon to talk to you. I will talk to you guys then.